As I said, our focus is on facilitating an export culture among small firms. And we have today Mr. Mark Hill, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Investment Development Corporation, now trading as Export Barbados. And this is an assignment that Mr. Hill would have assumed in April of 2021. He is the founder of Inogen Technologies and Biogen Biotechnologies, Inc., two research and development companies in the clean technologies market. Mr. Hill is a European Union scholar, earning a BA with honors in three-dimension design from the Montfort University. Mr. Hill is also an MIT-trained product and service innovation specialist, utilizing design thinking methodology, and currently a research fellow for his MPhil PhD candidate, at the University of the West Indies, Cayfield campus. His present appointment as CEO of Export Barbados brought a new focus on exports and innovation, a vision to rethink exports and to be laser focused with a purposeful and aggressive approach tailored to build a new export economy in Barbados. This vision is assisted by a strategic focus for the organization to build sustainable, responsible, and impactful investment and innovations, with the transformative direction pivoted on becoming a blue ocean organization. So he has great plans for Export Barbados to ensure that this state-owned enterprise is able to help transition our economy and transition our, might I add, MSME sector to being more export-oriented. Shaping Mr. Hill's vision for the organization is also his design background and experience in both the public and the private sectors, embracing an understanding of design as strategy well beyond styling or process. So that is a brief introduction, colleagues, today to our presenter, Mr. Mark Hill. And from that, you will agree with me that there's no better person at this time to help us distill this topic and to help us understand how do we really set about creating and facilitating that culture of exports, helping our MSMEs to go beyond the domestic space and look to the internationalization of their goods and services as a strategic step so that they can have sustainable businesses for the future. So colleagues all, welcome to this March webinar. And let me at this time introduce our speaker for the day, Mr. Mark Hill. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holder. I want to say thank you for inviting Export Barbados to participate in this particular discourse. Also want to send thanks to the board and all the members of the association. What I will do is share my screen, if that is okay, and then I will kind of drill down into exactly what we're going to be discussing today. So let me just, okay, so thank you. So our emphasis for today is looking at facilitating an export culture among small firms, and it's a very critical topic, particularly because of our pivot as a corporation away from the traditional modal or mindset in which folks frame the BIDC primarily as a space provider for micro and small and medium-sized companies, and even to a lesser extent larger companies, but also as predominantly small business development catalyst, small business development incubator type scenario. So in coming to the corporation and bringing to bear the experience that I have both in the private sector and through research, there's a number of things that we focus on in terms of adjusting and aligning the corporation to what is central, what is its core business. So fundamentally, CAP 340, which is the cap by which BIDC operates under, primarily frames the corporation as a export trade agency. And so the key strategy here was to align to that focus of being an export trade industry agency that facilitate export enterprise, boost indigenous exports. In fact, about 8 out of our 9 objects as a corporation, as a SOE, are aligned to exports. So strategically, what the board decided was that we're going to pivot towards exports and look at how we build that export culture in order to drive growth. So fundamentally, what I'm going to discuss today is not just where we're going, but we're also going to look at how we get there and what are the results that we're seeing on the ground so far. So we're going to walk you through that. So we're going to discuss the science of business, because one of the changes that we're making on the ground here is that we're getting out of the business of space and we're getting into the business of science and the science of business, so that we're really focusing now on how do we design, deliberately design and consciously design systems that produce double and triple digit growth. So we're quantifying what we mean by growth. So growth for us is nothing below 10%. If it's below 10%, we really missed our targets, and therefore we need to go back to the drawing board. So as far as the business of science is concerned and facilitating growth, we're going to look at why growth, and primarily to looking at the fact that what is Barbados? Barbados really constitutes high quality of life, and how do we sustain this high quality of life? And fundamentally, how do we get unstuck? And the reality is that because of the act by which small businesses are framed, the alignment to the Small Business Act kind of positions you within a particular framework. And that framework is shaped by 3 variables: less than 1 million in capital, whether stated capital or capital that is invested into the corporation through other means, below 2 million Barbados dollars in revenue per annum, and you're creating less than 25 jobs. So when we align ourselves to the small business framework within Barbados, really and truly, we see that we kind of, I don't want to say box ourselves in, but the alignment is very narrow. So we're going to speak to that a little bit. Then we're going to speak to what to grow, because very often when we speak about growth, exactly what are we growing? And some folks speak about growing their revenue. Some people speak about growing their profits. But fundamentally, what we're looking at growing is, one, our market design and our business architecture. How do you broaden your market design? How do you broaden your business architecture? That's one of the key things we want to look at as well. And then finally, how to grow. Basically beginning with the end in mind. Acronym which I kind of put together that I use as a leader is DNA. What's your DNA for growth? So regardless of how small you begin, your DNA determines how big you grow, or how you multiply or how you impact on the overall ecosystem. So fundamentally, we look from a business standpoint at what is the business design. You know, design can cover vision, strategy, purpose, all those things. We kind of boil all that into the business design, business architecture. The numbers, what are the numbers saying? I find that in Barbados, we tend not to use numbers to make our decisions, but we're now becoming more and more disciplined as we go forward. And then finally, alignment. Alignment is one of the most powerful tools that there is in business development. There are about 5 key tools that we use from a scientific point of view to grow businesses, and alignment is one of the principal tools. Anybody that's driving a car and is not aligned, you get in that wobble all over the place. You get inefficiency, you can't get speed, and can cause an accident. So alignment is extremely critical. So as you see the rocket ship there, the sky is the limit, exports is the limit. How do we get to that space where we get out into the atmosphere that cash flow no longer becomes an issue, the gravitational pull of cash flow no longer becomes an issue, the gravitational pull of talent no longer becomes an issue, and the gravitational pull of time no longer becomes an issue. But you get it into outer space, you can orbit, and therefore now you can begin to explore the Earth and explore life and a quality of life from a totally different perspective. In contrast to being not aligned, and what if we're not aligned, one of the things that I can guarantee is that we will self-destruct. And some of the data I'm going to go through now will show us that we're pretty much on a path of non-alignment. We're on a path of self-destruction, but we can pivot back. We're demonstrating through Export Barbados that we can pivot, that we can get back on track and not become a big accident as from an economic standpoint. So just a broad picture, what are we seeing? As far as the export brand alignment is concerned, we finished last year at 1%. Our first year focus was on halting decline because we had impact by COVID-19. And you can see there on the charts some of the numbers as far as the overall performance of the economy. On the right-hand side of the screen, the slide that has the Barbados domestic exports 1995 to 2021. You can see that 2019, how COVID impacted, we had that slight decline. And the overall domestic exports, the blue line at the top, still was declining by 1%, but Export Barbados, which is dealing with the certified exports, we had a 1% increase. So we stopped the bleeding as far as those exports were concerned. So we could have continued to have a decline, but coming in with a very aggressive strategy from day one. In fact, we actually sent to the staff on my first 100 days pathway for us to push forward into the a stronger export strategy, and you're going to see the results of that push on the numbers itself going forward. On the other side, you can see in the purple line going up. Yes, we're seeing an increase in exports, but the bulk of that, if you look at the bottom lines where we see agriculture and manufacturing, how that's trending downwards, what is indicating is that all sector growth is primarily based on inflation. So don't let that fool you. So our outputs are declining, but because the price of produce and services are increasing, the numbers look as though we're growing, but fundamentally, as far as real value add is concerned, we're actually declining as far as our value add output is concerned. So what did Export Barbados do when as early as July, we started to pivot because I came in April, promote an export strategy among the staff, promote an export strategy with the board, and fundamentally, we started to really look at the results per quarter. But this key focus was on bringing to bear a design-centric value creation. So being more export savvy. We asked ourselves three fundamental questions. Is it real? Is this real business? Is there real demand in this thing? Or is this just somebody's idea, somebody's hope, somebody's dream that think it will work? Is this real business? We asked ourselves those fundamental questions. Can it win? Is the technology in place? Are the systems in place? Is the logistics in place that can really make this into the international market as far as these goods and services is concerned? And is it worth it? Is it bankable? Is it in the double-digit, triple-digit numbers? So to that extent, we introduced something called a scorecard, and we start scoring our customers in terms of a point system. So we know based on our scorecard where export is as far as export savviness is concerned. and as far as their design value index is concerned. But the key thing about the design value index is that it facilitates triple digit growth. So it is a model that most of the companies that are outbeating the Fortune 500s and outbeating those who are on the S&P index, like Coca-Cola, like Apple, these firms, what really scientifically distinguish them from the other firms is that they are primarily design centric. So we try to foster a high degree of design centricity within the first the new build up that we're doing going forward. The other thing that we looked at is why align to an export culture brand. Why export Barbados in a nutshell? Because fundamentally, Barbados is a high quality life destination. So for tourists, even for us who are living here, what Barbados is not just sun, sea, and sand. It's not just flying fish and cuckoo and calypso. It's really about a combination of all those key things that constitute a high quality of life. And that's really our core brand. The world knows us for this high quality of life. The other thing is that we value, we create value by building systems that improve life. So for example, we build a very strong educational system. Every Barbadian can be educated and that quality education adds to a high standard of life. Also healthcare. So we build systems that lend itself to improve life. So life really is a brand for Barbados, and it's contextualized by those three things. And it's also the brand that many visitors stick around Barbados for in a phenomenal way. Number one, because Barbados is safe. Not only is there secure investments and global standards for fintech and our international business and our tourism product have one of the best brands on the planet. So all that lends itself to quality of life narrative, but primarily because Barbados is safe. People feel safe in Barbados. So that's a key aspect of our brand. And then also it's sustainable. We're global leaders in climate change and environment, and we are environmental leaders. We pioneered the solar water heater. Our economy was built out on wind, with the sugarcane industry, biomass. So fundamentally, we are leaders in sustainability as an economy. And then the third thing that is well established is that Barbados is also savvy. We make sound decisions as a people. We experience good governance, and we build out systems that work. So Barbados works. So these are three things that are well established in the global market. But then we said, so it's safe, it's sustainable, it's savvy. But what are the core brands for exports as we build and go forward? And we underscore that one of those key brands is key aspects of the brand is that we are scientific. We have to be scientific in what we do and how we go about it, because the world has pretty much moved on from just raw talent. So the raw talent framework, our West Indies cricket is pretty much rooted in raw talent initially, but the rest of the world, yes, talent, but also scientific talent. Combine the two so that now the scientific support augments the raw talent. So yes, you can be a natural entrepreneur, have entrepreneurial instincts, but when you add that scientific support to your natural instincts, the significant levels of growth. So we're in the business of science. And then finally, speed. So the ease of doing business, we got to get things done a lot faster. People waiting in lines to do stuff, that stuff is over. We're 20 years behind the rest of the world as far as speed is concerned. So we're really running to catch up. Some folks may complain, the pace is too hot, but really and truly, fundamentally, Jamaica is ahead of us. Trinidad is ahead of us. The rest of the bigger economies are ahead of us, and we are running to catch up. One of my favorite horses of all time is Secretariat, because Secretariat is a talent that catches up, passes, and wins. So fundamentally, we now have to build and attract the talent to our corporations, to our enterprises that are, one, have phenomenal stamina and also have phenomenal speed. And this is the kind of new talent that we need to compete in the global economy that is emerging. So let me just zero in a little bit more to help frame how we're facilitating exports. So the first thing we've done is that we create that life, using that life brand, we structured that based on what are the core things that Barbados have. If we strip away all the stuff, strip away all the fluff, fundamentally, what are we doing? Fundamentally, what do we have? How do we build our economy and with what, right? So there's three core things. Number one, our people, and we define that as our design economy. Some people may call it the creative economy. Some people may call it the orange economy. As a market designer, all economies are artifacts, and they're products of engineering, they're products of design based on policies. So then our oceans, you might want to call it blue, you might want to call it whatever color. By the end of the day, you're looking at how do you utilize your EEZ, your exclusive economic zone, and the resources within them to drive not just prosperity, but to drive quality of life, higher quality of life. And then finally, our islands, biodiversity, how do we leverage our biodiversity to facilitate biotrade and the bioeconomy? So these three things here really constitute our primary resources. So the focus then was aligning to life and structuring our analysis. And I'm going to speak a lot more about data analysis around those three things. So myself and the data analytical team that we structured, we then took all of the export data that we had from all the way back from 1995, but I'm just giving you clips from 2015 onwards. So pre-COVID, in COVID, and now I don't want to say post-COVID, but the reality is we're kind of going back to normal in an economic sense. So you can see that our bioeconomy and biotrade is our number one export trend. That does around between 70 to 75% of all exports are based on biotrade, with rum leading those exports. Then second, we have our design economy. And in our design economy, we have metal products, housing, furniture, garments. So there's a category of products that fit within that and a category of brands. It is second, but you can see that it is on a downward trend. So we're now designing the interventions for those SMEs and large businesses that are in that particular space. So you'll be hearing about those design economy interventions. And then our ocean economy has been trending up, but you're going to see that also leapfrog and growth by some significant numbers in the very near future because of the interventions that we're designing there as well. The next thing we did was that we laid out the Barbados export tier system. So this tier system gives us a clear sense of what is happening at each level in the economy. So in a nutshell, you can say that those at the top tier, which really constitute those who are exporting 10 million US and above, they are tier one, and those are the large enterprises in Barbados, primarily foreign owned, but they're the ones who are responsible for the bulk of the exports. And then tier two, again, primarily foreign owned or regional companies, and they're the ones who are responsible for exports between 5 million to 10 million. And then we come down to tier three, which is the exporters that are responsible for between 1 million to 5 million. And these are primarily some regionally owned, but you're now getting into our medium-sized businesses. So we have about 13 medium-sized businesses in that tier three category that are contributing to all the exports in that area. And then you can see tier four, which is primarily now MSMEs, and these form the bulk of the exporters. Overall, there are about 120 persons that are participating in the exports right now. Of the 10,000 SMEs out there, and MSMEs out there, there are only 120 participating in the exports. at this level, at the certified level. So let me just clarify that. At the certified level, so only 120 persons are using the bilateral agreements, the trade agreements that we have to allow products to get into markets duty-free, allow products to come in under preferential treatments and stuff like that. Only 120 companies out of the 10,000 are utilizing this both on the product and the service side. So we need to really get a greater level of participation in that. In 1980s, there were 238 persons participating in export, and now we're down to 120. So we've actually dropped almost close to 80-90% in decline in exporters, persons participating in exports. And then that final tier, which is the key tier that really constitute those persons who may be members of SBA, you can see that we just had a nice bump in 2019. You can see that COVID lent itself to flattening out to a degree, but now coming into 2020, we are seeing the best numbers ever from small business companies going forward. So our tier system gives us that good track of where the small businesses are performing, where the mediums are performing on a monthly basis, and where the large companies are performing on a monthly basis. So this is something we can share with the association every week or every month, so you can have this data as well. So sustaining double-digit growth. So we're still looking at where we are right now. So having come in April, you can see here from this chart, there was 3 paradigm shifts that we tried to make. We're still working through it with our team here on the ground. We're still working through it with the other stakeholders, the exporters as we engage, and we have more stakeholder engagement. But a shift to a business is business mindset. Business is business mindset as it relates to time and timing. There are 3 variables that you have to manage from an operational standpoint if you want to get growth. That's time, that's capital, and talent. If you don't manage those 3 things, you're simply not going to get growth. So we found that in the marketplace, that dealing with business as a business was not a culture. And so when we talk about the export culture, we're really talking about business as business culture. You know, so it's not whether me and your friends, whether I like you, you like me. What are the numbers saying? How much time do we have to get this to market? When do we have to move to get this to meet the demand that it has to meet? So time and timing is critical in sustaining double-digit growth. The next thing is that the capital ecosystem had to be addressed. So our special technical assistance program, well, it was well subscribed to, and during the period 1995, when the special technical assistance program was implemented after we joined the WTO, the government would have invested in direct special technical assistance 55 million Barbados dollars. And the overall spend on seeking to boost exports, industry, and small businesses was $500 million was spent overall. But when we look around at the ecosystem, we cannot identify at this point what value we've gone for that $5 million. Our estates have been run down. The product offering is not as strong. So we're still 20 years behind. So we invested $500 million in developing exports, in developing the small businesses, and in developing the overall ecosystem, and with a direct injection of 55 million, but yet we cannot see the results that we're looking for. All right, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit more. And then finally, the export business. need a new set of talent. As I said, we need secretariats, we need persons with more stamina and that can sprint at the same time to get to this double-digit growth. So we know that if we want to get to $1 billion in exports by 2030, that we need to sustain double-digit growth between 18 to 20%. So as you look here at our comparative growth rate for selected periods, so we kind of break it down into quarters. So January to March, at the beginning of 2021, you can see we had negative export growth. COVID would have impacted on that, and is also reflected in the Small Business Association members' performance. You guys would have had a decline of about 60% of activities. Then in April, when we came in at 1.2, but we weren't yet driving our export focus. We were at early alignment phase at that point. Still in July, early alignment phase as well, both with the market and internally and externally as well. But as we began to drive heavy that export focus, I actually got in my car, drive to all those top tier manufacturers, middle tier manufacturers, and say, listen, you got to do better than this. And we had these in-depth discussions, primarily top tier exporters, Binoc and West Indies Rum Distillery and Mount Gay and all these folks. We got to get to double-digit growth. Fundamentally, you got to move beyond $10 million, and you got to grow this to a $25 million business by this time. And the stakeholders who actually own these corporations, who some of them who flew in, said, you're on. And they began to make the investments in growth. And we're holding them to that 10 to 20% growth as we go forward. So what I'm doing today is coming to hold the members of the Small Business Association to a commitment to double-digit growth, at least, yeah? So before I go on, so October, we started our brand, Export Barbados brand campaign. Not quite in October, we started a little earlier, but we started to see the results of some new numbers coming through in October, December. 11%, so we start to see double-digit growth begin to peak its head. And then we end up the year on average at 1%. So we stopped the bleeding out. The bleeding out actually stopped. And now, this quarter, we're at 16.6% growth. So between January to March 2022, we're at 16.6% growth. So the pivot, you're seeing the numbers in the pivot. So while a lot of persons may be uncomfortable with the disruption in the status quo model of small business development and how the ecosystem should function, there are a lot of voices in terms of how it should function, how it should work, but the numbers are showing that an export-oriented strategy is actually paying off, right? So these numbers are sent to the Ministry of Finance every week. And so they can see that we're on that double-digit growth trajectory going forward, and we're going to deliver it. And now we're going to start to look at how do we get to triple-digit growth based on our sense of business modeling. Just a little bit more drill down into what we're seeing happening with SMESs. Sorry for that. So we have about 10,000. Micro, small, and medium enterprises, and they generate around $3.7 billion per year in economic activity, minus agricultural outputs. So over 40% of national output comes from the MSMEs. But SMEs need between 1.3 billion to 1.5 billion US dollars to deliver their goods and services. So to deliver goods and services, SMEs, small businesses, need 1.3 to 1.5 billion. So 75% of every dollar micro, small, and medium enterprises earn, 75% of that is in need of foreign exchange to earn that dollar. 75%. Myself and Kevin Greenwich, we sit down, we run these numbers so that you can have a clear sense of what we're talking about with foreign change, depending on your small business is. So fuel, material, software, equipment, furniture, even the food that you eat to deliver your services, all that bulk of that is imported. So 75% of every dollar you earn depends on somebody else other than the SMEs earning foreign exchange so that you can keep your small business running. So it's either the taxman that is on the road that is earning foreign exchange through his invisible exports. When he takes a tourist from one place to the next and they pay him in US dollars, that taxman is helping your small business to keep going. When the hotelier, so the tourism sector provides a lot of the inputs for MSMEs to actually deliver this. Just the reality of the numbers, right? Because SMEs only earn 7.3% of the foreign exchange needed to deliver their goods and services. So why export? How do we facilitate exports for SMEs? Because it's extremely critical. Because what that 75% really underscores is that inflation keeps creeping in because the cost of goods that you're bringing in order to provide local support keeps going up in the international market. Because we're not earning it, all of it, tourism is the primary earner, and then the rest we're borrowing, IMF, et cetera, et cetera. So somebody's borrowing money or earning money to help you run your business and to keep it going. This is not sustainable. This is going to blow up. This is going to blow up. So a fundamental shift needs to take place in terms of focus. What do we mean by growth? Growth cannot be measured by Barbados dollars. Growth has to be measured by US or foreign currency earning. And so I think what the SMEs need to start to look at is how do we move from the 7.3 contribution to foreign exchange earning and move to at least 40%. At least. There, then we're looking a little bit more stable as we go forward. But right now it's very, very flaky. And as inflation keeps creeping in and the prices of oil, the price of goods, the price of wheat and corn and these things keep going up, we're going to move from 75%, we're going to move to 80%, we're going to move to 95%, and then you're going to have that kaboom. But we can address that by pivoting towards a very aggressive export focus. Get out there, you have one of the most powerful passports on the planet that allows you to get into over 125 countries. You also have some of the best bilateral agreements on earth that gives you access to almost close to about 1 billion people in market access. Barbadians have. While we're here trying to just simply focus on the national market of just under 300,000 plus the tourists of 1.5 million. But we have access to almost close to 1 billion based on our bilateral agreements and based on our diplomacy. So we got to leverage our commercial diplomacy to see greater growth for our micro, small, and medium enterprises. So the critical question is, how do we grow SMEs into global companies? And what is the business and market design that facilitate an export-oriented culture? So just drawing some numbers from the research that was carried out back in 2016. This is where I got a bulk of my numbers from, had discussion also with the person that carried out the research and Professor Mr. Moore before we came into this discussion. But you can see the numbers for yourself. On the industry side, the numbers are consistent, reflect what we're seeing here at certification. Small businesses are really not contributing to much exports at all. But on the service side, that's a lot bigger. But when you add it all together, both on goods and services, it's just around 95 million US dollars. So that's where we get the 7 point. So just kind of go through pretty quick, as because I know time is getting away. Some of the key indicators that we are measuring. So one, I'm measuring alignment. So if these three things are not aligned, you simply will not grow. So if Export Barbados as the rocket ship, so to speak, is not aligned from the standpoint of time available and capital and talent, we're simply not going to grow. So we measure alignment. The other thing that we measure as well is discipline. Building the capacity to consistently perform at high levels. You know, so we gotta be there to reproduce high level performance over and over high level performance. So to do that, we adopted the global standard for business analysts, standard, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about that. So that becoming more disciplined as business analysts as far as our craft is concerned when it comes to business architecture. The other thing is predictability. Customers need predictability. You don't want that 1 minute you go and you buy the apple juice, and the next minute you come back, the apple juice tastes different. You're coming to a particular product or brand because it is consistent, right? So, and again, predictability in our ecosystem is one of the most difficult things on the planet. The scientific approaches that is necessary for predictability. We don't value science. We don't value scientific rigor, testing and measuring. We're not really into that. We kind of have a culture of ad hocness. So we got to build capacity to become a lot more predictable. Our products have to be more predictable. Our brands have to be more predictable, even at the SMME level. So let me give, for example, a vendor in the market down at Spring Garden. But we go and we buy mango juice from on a Saturday morning. So 1 week he's using Paris mangoes, so you got a different flavor. Next week he's using mangalong, but it gives you diarrhea because mangalong has an enzyme in it that deals with your stomach in a way that the Paris mango doesn't. Or next week he's using Julie mangoes. So you can't predict what quality you're going to get, even at that vendor's level. So we got to start to train our people to produce predictability. You got to be predictable. That when customers keep coming back, they're getting the same thing. McDonald's is predictable. A McDonald's burger is the exact same size, texture, and taste, whether it be in China, whether it be in Russia, whether it be in Barbados, whether it be in New York or England. Predictability. The other thing is endurance, being able to go the extra mile. I call it stamina as well. Being phenomenally pragmatic, and also at the same time, giving your employees that nourishment that they need to go the extra mile, and that can come through employment recognition and employees reward as well. So how do we build endurance in our organizations, that you're not losing talent, people not stressed out, people not going and leaving, you know, building endurance systems. And then finally, creating value, enterprise value. What is the financial performance? Now this chart that is next to it is just kind of reinforced. If you look at the orange chart, the orange developing new international markets, you will see how low those are with micro and small businesses. There's almost zero investment by micro and small businesses in developing new international markets. Again, this came from the small business and research that was carried out in 2016. All right. Only on the industry side are we seeing any investment in research and development as far as international markets is concerned. But there's a heavy investment for national markets. Most of the capital expenditure is on national markets. And therefore, we're working on our new products, processes, and new businesses, primarily for the national market. So we're earning 3.7 billion, sorry, but we're taking the bulk of that and spending in research and development back into the national market. But we haven't really spent our capital, not the government's capital, not special technical assistance. We have not spent some of the capital that we have access to, enough of the capital in penetrating international markets. So how? Better business architecture and design. One, we have to embrace our cultural context. We're open, small island developing state. So we are OSIC. We also have to look at the fact that our enterprise and business architecture is it well-defined practice for conducting enterprise analysis, design, planning, implementation, and using holistic approach for successful development and execution organization strategies. Are we really aligning to strategy? Or are we just following ideas? Because there's a big difference between ideas and strategy. So so as a designer, there are lots of ideas we generate, but sometimes you could throw away 98 ideas if they're not aligned to your strategy for growth. Digitization ecosystem. Everything is being digitized globally. So we have to migrate away from the traditional business development officer model, BEO model, which we have at the small business agency ministry, we have at YES, and we have at Trust Loans, and we have, lots of business development officers. But the key talent that is needed to drive the new growth is business analysts. The market has shifted. Digitization has forced us out of that traditional business development box into a new business analyst box, whereby business is now interfacing with science and technology. Yeah. So, for example, as I sit here as the CEO, and I'm looking out at the fact that we got 1.6 million square feet of space for our real estate, and 6.6 million. From a science point of view, as we migrate out of the space business, my immediate thinking is I'm going to put all that estate on the blockchain, move away from having to draft contracts internally through a legal process, shift towards smart contracts on the blockchain, tie that entire framework to the metaverse, so you can actually engage Export Barbados not only through our physical estates, but also through our virtual estates. And in those virtual estates, you have access to a lot of scientific services as a small business person. So as business analysts begin to look at how we integrate that interface between science and technology, we need new talent to come to the table to drive the new growth that we need. So to do that, we're equipping the team to facilitate you as small business persons through the International Business Analysis Service. So we're going to be delivering more business analysis service, so that we're more data-driven decisions, more design value index analysis of your organization, of your company. So we're measuring your design centricity, but that's going to be the indicator to tell us if you're wired for double-digit or triple-digit growth. And then fundamentally, we are going to look at how do we strengthen your organizational, strategical, tactical, and operational stuff, right? So right now, our team here at Export Barbados, they're going through their level 1 training. The board had invested quite a handsome bit of money to train all the staff at the top level, so that they can begin their journey in the business analyst frame. And then we'll next, once everybody's gone through the level 1, then we're going to move to level 2, level 3, level 4. We're really experts in business analysis. We are now experts in the science of business. So thank you very much. The key point I want to leave you with is that we got to align for growth. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much as well, Mark, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. I'm sure the 75 persons that were on this call with me today will agree that it's been much food for thought. Lots of information shared. I particularly like the acronym of DNA. I mean, at the end of the day, you're saying that you must begin by having the right DNA for growth, DNA for business, design, numbers, and alignment. In the absence of the right DNA, then you're not going to see growth. And then you identify those indicators for growth. Time, capital, talent, discipline, predictability, endurance, and creating value. Lots of good information here. Mark, I've taken note of the paradigm shift from that you're proposing from business development officer to a business analyst. That I'm sure that my staff on the call are smiling because recently we've been in our own strategic conversations, and I've been suggesting that we have to get to that frame where we're thinking analytically, we're analyzing information, analyzing data to be able to inform our decisions. So that in itself is a cultural shift in how we approach, the development of business. So there's been some good food here, I would say, in this presentation. I'm going to invite the participants, please, to get your comments, get your questions, post them in the chat so we can have a short Q&A session now. We have a few minutes allotted for this. So I want to encourage you to send me your questions at this time. I'm particularly heartened, Mark, that you use the research done by the association back in 2016 and actually carried out by Dr. Lashley, Jonathan Lashley. And I want to go back to a point made. Actually, as you were speaking, I went to collect mine. I went to collect my copy so that I can ask a question from the research. And just for the benefit of all on the call, you can go on our website, www.sba.bb, and you see that the research is still there, posted. It's a little dated now, 2016. We are hopefully going to be able to update this for 2022, but the information is still critical. So Mark, my first comment, looking at this research has shown, when Dr. Lashley did this back in 2016, that MSMEs accounted for about 38.8% of total exports. Only 1.1% coming from actual micro firms. So we took the point that micro businesses are not really contributing any significantly to exports at this point in time. And the question is it a capacity issue? Because lots of micro firms are contented to concentrate on the domestic space, not contented really to grow beyond where they're at. So is it a capacity issue that may very well be affecting the low numbers? That's one. And then secondly, when we drill down and look in a very granular way at this data, we're saying that the exports from small businesses and even maybe medium to less extent are really in the services sector. They're not goods. The goods are produced primarily by the larger firms. So when you speak about exports now at the small and to less extent medium enterprises, is primarily in the area of services. So is that a niche that we maybe should be looking at developing even further? So those are my two quick questions for you to give your comments on. One, the low numbers for the micro firm, just 1% based on this data, do you think that is a capacity issue? And if it is, that services tend to be the major area of focus for small firms, or to less extent medium enterprises, is that a niche area that we really should be tapping into more? So those are my two initial questions. I have lots coming in from the membership, so after that I'll go straight to the chat for those questions. Your thoughts?
Yeah, on question number one, in terms of Lashley and Moore's numbers, their numbers may be based on overall domestic exports, right? My data is based on our certified exports, right? So maybe there are, when it comes to broad domestic exports, reflecting that 38%, because the broad domestic exports account for things that are shipped out via FedEx or DHL that we don't necessarily capture, but we calculate for it based on a 30% bump on our numbers. So we just kind of use a variable to just predict that. So yes, that 1% on the micros is an area, I think, of a big area for growth. Because, for example, Canada, they do a lot of growth with their micros through not just housewives, but teachers and stuff like that, part-time on persons who are doing specialty items. They actually have a specific export program for those products, and it's $1 billion sector. You know, so it's not about how big your company is that matters. So the size is irrelevant when it comes to exports. What is really relevant is the consistency part, that predictability. So if you're doing a sweetbread, we're prepared to put that sweetbread from Virgin Atlantic and ship it wherever you want to ship it. You know, but don't give us a sweetbread with one type of coconut in the middle, and then the next time the shipment going off is a different type of coconut, you know? So for example, you would have noticed that we would have put out an ad, which a lot of people misunderstood, by the way, for breadfruits. We're actually future buying all the breadfruits on all the trees at $1. So whether they're green, whether they're ripe, whatever the case may be, so you're guaranteed cash flow. And they turn the breadfruit sector into a futures market. And then there's an app that runs the entire ecosystem, so that the owners can certify their breadfruits. And then there's a cold chain van that comes collect the breadfruit so they can get to Virgin Atlantic at the right temperature and be exported at the highest possible grade, but also to circumvent against pretty larceny. So we can actually trace right back where those breadfruits are coming from. So the size of your business does not matter for Export Barbados. So whether it's small or large, it is, can you experience double-digit or triple-digit growth? That's all I look at. So you come through the door and you're doing $5 in breadfruits, but you want to, not breadfruits or sweet bread, and you want to grow your company to do $10 in 10 US dollars, and come through the door, come, we're in that business, we're here to help you get to double and triple digit growth. And that is our core focus. So I hope that helps. So it is a key area that we need to link to.
Mm. Okay. So it doesn't matter if it's goods or services.
No, doesn't matter.
I have a few comments here. Let me first of all assure Vivian Nelson, based on your comment, that all of our webinars are available on our website. So immediately after this session, in case you miss anything that Mark would have said, you can go to our website, www. in the SBA TV segment, and you can watch this session again, inclusive of full PowerPoint presentation and so on. So for all persons on the call, in the event that you miss any component of it, fear not, you can go back and you can watch the entire webinar there. And not only this month, the month of March, but any of the previous months that you may have missed, you see them there as well. So here's Dion Gibson asking the question, what would you say are the leading reasons behind the drop of participation in small businesses by 80%? I believe this had to do with an earlier slide that you shared.
Yeah, number one, we just think that the focus just wasn't there. You know, people build what they're encouraged to build. You know, and if we had primarily emphasis on small businesses, and the government's mandate was primarily on building out small businesses, then people are going to focus on small business because that's where the support is coming from. So over a 20-year period since we joined WTO, 1997 onward, where we had to become compliant with WTO rules and regulations, and compliance means that we have to remove a lot of our preferential barriers and stuff like that. We didn't address our model as a country. You know, we were batting on Arthur Lewis industrialization by invitation model. Then we stepped into and became founding members of the WTO. But we went into the WTO agreement with a what you call manufacture for the domestic market, the import substitution model of industrialization and services. So we kind of focus more on national for the last 20 years or more about, and the numbers showing it in the charts. So there was more investment in research and development in national market than the international market. Well, becoming members in WTO, you really was to go the opposite direction and have a more export-oriented policy rather than an import substitution policy. So we didn't have a policy program that fit. So we pretty much lost 20 years because of our design, our market design. So I hope that helped.
All right, Andy Paris is asking, does Export Barbados have the business growth and export alignment services available for SMEs right now?
Well, we're building out. We're trying to get the team there as fast as possible because, you know, we predominantly we're dealing with the traditional BDO model, and the BDO model is rooted in a lot of assumptions, right? So now that we're shifting to a more database, data mining, scientific analysis and then augment that with your idea. But we're getting there, so we anticipate that by mid 2022 we should be there. For example, our business analysis of markets, French markets and stuff like that, we're now beginning to do that. So the tooling, the tools are now being procured to help us to be able to serve you as fast as possible. Yeah.
Okay, I see Neil Corbin here, chairman of the board, is asking, is there a cost right now for the business analyst consultation?
Well, fundamentally, we are SOE, and as an SOE that we are weaning off of government's breast by 2025, so that we're weaning ourselves off of the need for subvention. Because if exports are profitable, it must also be profitable for Export Barbados. So otherwise, it's a scam. So if we're saying to you that you can experience double-digit and triple-digit growth, the corporation itself must experience double-digit and triple-digit growth. So long and short, yes, we're gonna charge a fee as part of our new product service suite, but we're not going to start out with rates that kill small businesses or micro businesses. We will create a framework that allows everybody to live going forward. In addition to that, we're adding some new value add solutions. Over here is talked about the Export Bank of Barbados that's being framed out to help with cash flow for exporters, you know. So which does not focus on the national market. So you can go to the commercial bank for financing for the national market. But for export market, we're going to make sure that the ecosystem facilitates that double and triple digit growth. Yeah.
Right. I have several questions here, Mark, comments even from persons around the whole notion of, you know, what do I need to do now to get ready to come to the Export Barbados? So there's several of them, but the common theme I'm seeing here is, you know, persons like the idea, like what they're hearing, the new thrust, if you will, of Export Barbados. And so they're wondering, you know, yes, is there a fee? What do I need to do to prepare myself to get ready? Is there a template that you have that the small business person has to, you know, provide baseline information? So what really are the next steps, if you will, for small firms who want now to engage Export Barbados?
Yeah, so in the immediate, what we have implemented is something called the Export Academy, right? That is hitting the ground running as early as next April. So that is an entry point into the export space. So that's the bridge between agencies such as, Trust Loan. So yes, Enterprise Growth Fund. So in the Export Academy is where we transform. We kind of use this term, and I'm not using a derogatory term, but from a duck to eagle. All right, duck because you're primarily focusing on the local market. Eagle to the fact that you're soaring into the international market. So we're giving you the we would call the export skills, because it's two different skill sets. Value chain analysis, the logistics is totally different. The exposure, the risk assessment is a lot more different, and due diligence is a lot more critical. So being prepared as an export entrepreneur is a little different from being prepared as a national entrepreneur. So the Export Academy is there, so you can actually sign up and become part of that. Right now, we have about 111 persons in that space. And we have a team that's committed to that Export Academy. And soon we're doing the road shows, going from community to community, start to capture those midwives, et cetera, that are doing, not midwives, housewives, that are doing their different products in the communities, and see how we can consolidate them through our logistics program, put all this stuff in one 20-foot container and ship out overseas. So a lot of the systems that we're putting in place are now coming. So we're now beginning to focus on shaping out our products and services and fine-tuning them as we go forward.
Now I have a question here from Cornelius, one that I personally have had a challenge with for a while. Persons are often of the view that you should look to capitalizing your domestic market before exporting. And there's a lot of material out there on what is known as the Born Global theories that suggest you can develop products, you can develop services for the export market, leapfrogging your own domestic space, not focusing at all on your domestic market. So the question really is Mark, what are your views on that? Should not a business seek to do well first in the local market before launching into exports?
Well, my view is simple: business is business, and business is primarily about demand. So wherever the demand is, you go. So if there's local demand, I would maybe try to deliver maybe 40% of what I can do to the local market. But I will not allow the local market to limit me. I'm going to drive towards 60% export, regardless, because that's in my DNA. So even with my companies in the past, Inogen and Biogen, Biogen is now an internationally owned company. I don't believe that, a business is not a woman. I think of it. Our man, I think of it as a car. So if somebody comes along like it better than me, it's sold, and then I go on and start a new one, follow the same science and build out something different. But where the demand is, where we go. So, and that is the business way to think. A lot of us are doing a lot of love affairs. And those love affairs are costing us a lot of pain, a lot of money, a lot of stress. And some of these relationships with some of our businesses we need to get out of and get into a business relationship that is really fundamentally about growth, double and triple digit growth. So I totally support, not leapfrog to where there's demand. If the local market has an element of demand, you meet it, put it on the bank. But I can guarantee you that the demand overseas is any demand you can get in Barbados. So for example, even berry fruits. And I got to use this as an example over and over. People might laugh at it or trivialize it. But the demand for berry fruits is not coming from our diaspora. The demand for berry fruits is coming from those people who are in Canada that lives in the Philippines, who come from the Philippines. And Hawaii and those places that they call it ulu. So they're the ones that want it. They're in Canada and stuff in the millions. While Barbados only have a few thousand persons in Canada. So that diaspora is small. So the demand globally, because it's a gluten-free food and stuff like that, is growing exponentially. And so the guy here who we're supporting, guy named Sean Ho, he's just meet a demand. So he doesn't even need the Barbados market for his business, you know, and that can be replicated with a lot of different products, you know. The other thing that I think is that a lot of us try to sell our culture. Business is business. If, you know, if the culture makes sense, if there's demand for it, sell it. If there's no demand for it, pivot. You know, you have to make a business decision, not a cultural decision. You know, you cannot make an indigenous decision. You have to make a business decision. And so fundamentally, we really want to begin to cultivate that. So by the time somebody leaves, say, an NCF model with their business development officers, or to leave the YES model and then come to us, they're actually going to go through shock. Because what we want to produce is somebody that's meeting demand and not necessarily pushing their culture or pushing their idea. You know, so there's a baptism you need to get to become an exporter. You have to be born again.
That's what Jesus told Nicodemus. I want to get in at least one or two more before we close out. Katrina wants us to go back to the discussion we were having earlier on the academy. And her query is, what about those who have already completed the export readiness training? Do they also need to join the academy first?
The export readiness training is irrelevant for where we're going, because the academy now is giving you more. It's giving you a set of tooling that the export readiness didn't. So let me put it this way: or you know, you went to one university and you did your associate degree, and you're asking if you can transfer those credits into the program, because you know, the reality is that what we're building out in the Export Academy is really fine-tuned for double-digit growth. So we're not just giving you a general orientation. We're specifically equipping people who want to be in the business of double and triple-digit growth. So there's a totally different curriculum altogether.
Mm-hmm. Here's an interesting query from John Spence. Maybe a two-part question for you. Are the local sales of small firms providing inputs to the large exporting firms? That's the first one. If you need me to repeat it, I can do so. Are the large exporting firms competing with differentiated products or with low costs? And if differentiated, is this difference protected using intellectual property rights? You want me to repeat those?
No, I'm good. I'm good at writing
down. So, okay, good. All right.
Yeah, so local sales. The large firms predominantly export about 95% of their outputs. So they're only participate in the local market with around 5% of their outputs. So yes, they're competing, so to a degree, but they're not dependent on the local market for their growth, right? So the top 5, and even to a lesser extent, the what I would say is that the model of an export enterprise, because it actually is a scientific definition for export enterprise. Export enterprises exporting 60% of its output. These big firms surpass that, so they're 80 and 95% of their outputs they drive out into the market. As far as using local small business input, no, there's zero input. So for example, you know that 75% that I spoke about for every dollar. So let's look at rum, for example, because I'll talk about export. The molasses is imported. The barrels are imported. Some import the yeast. The technology is imported, right? Some would have retained some historically, but there's new technology imported. And the scientific equipment is imported, right? Then the fuel to heat and to produce. So the only input that's happening locally with the bulk of our imports is primarily labor. So labor is the only contribution to value add that is really coming from the local markets. So our small firms contributing to that may be in some part of the ecosystem, let's say transport and logistics, so a driver that owns a truck goes and pick up stuff or removing garbage from off premises, just like that, but not in a way that impacts on their economic performance. The economic performance comes from their export predominant focus. And then the second part of the question, in terms of the large firms, the large firms are that we engage, they're drifting more and more away from competing and looking at how they can help smaller firms. And that's a model that we're seeing happening. So there's some firms that are doing research and development, and they're using some local scientists to help facilitate the research and development at the micro level at this point. But we're now seeing that evolving as a trend. So thanks. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. All right. Finally, I have a number of queries that seem to be, if we can bring them together to get the thoughts out, seem to be suggesting maybe one common theme. One, that, we're talking about facilitating a culture of exports. What are we doing with our education system, for example, to maybe help with, encouraging in our business studies and our business training, our entrepreneur training, the understanding around exports. So that's one. And then two, I know you made a point earlier about Canada and the micro firms and so on. I got a very interesting comment here. It's okay to talk about Canada, but in Canada, many programs, you can access grants, you can access funding with ease. When one commentator is saying, when you pose a question on a website, you get a response in a matter of maybe hours. And here it would appear sometimes our small businesses, have to run around, have to go through and jump through hoops and so on to get responses, to get answers on issues. So a number of things need to be put in place relative now to the business development support and the services being provided by agencies to help businesses who want to export to be able to do so with ease. So I've sought to capture all those comments and all those points there relative to the support side now of the ecosystem, and how well is that functioning to be able to facilitate exports.
Yeah, so we're building out and strengthening the support side of the ecosystem for exports. And let me be very clear on that. So that we're really strengthening our exporters to be able to do what they do extremely well, right? So we're building out that ecosystem. The systems are getting put in place. Every single day we're building out systems. We are bringing in consultants. We are hiring in experts to make sure that we're getting the right ecosystem to be framed out. And then at the same time, training to get our current team to pivot to pretty much the new emphasis. But I want to say one key thing around that, because it really sounds like there's still that demand for business development services. And I want to address that, because I think that that's a very flaw in our model. The entrepreneur is the business development officer. The small business owner is the business development officer. And I think what we need to have is business development training for the entrepreneurs, business development training for the small business owner, right? So that the ecosystem is helping that business development owner. You cannot outsource business development. And it just blows my mind that we have this culture of outsourcing business development to somebody else, when fundamentally business development is an internal decision-making process. Nobody can tell you the risk that you need to take and govern or direct the risk that you need to own the business development process as an entrepreneur. right? And that's one of the key things in the model that has to shift. And that's my push to the Ministry of Small Business. And my push also to the Minister for Commerce, my minister as well. We can no longer, in a sustainable sense, throw business development at some experts in ministries or in a SOE and claim that they're the ones that need to help move this thing forward. No. And that's the difference between us and Canada. Those folks for Export Development Canada, for example, EDC, they are export credit agency. They're bank. So when we look in and we're not seeing the operating system behind, what they're getting is not grant money. What they get is money at lower interest rates. So they're getting cash flow support at 3% and 2%. And then the same export credit agency is giving them back cash back after they leave their money with them at 1%. But we're trying to do business development in a commercial system, through a commercial banking system that is taking 13 and 18% one way and then giving you back 0.00%. So it comes back to the point, business is business. And you have to own completely your business development process. It cannot be farmed out. I do not recommend you farm it out to any agency, including Export Barbados. We will support with the business analysis and help you with the insights that you need to make better business decisions for your development. So a business development person is responsible for sales and driving sales and closing market deals and capturing leads and closing deals. You know, it's not this person, not just this advisor that somehow is going to come up with some business plan and wave a wand in the air and somehow you're going to go away with the advice that they give you that boom, experience double-digit growth. It has to be an internal desire that you have as a business person. It's about the stamina that you want to have and the discipline to drive growth. And fundamentally, that has to be the shift, Dr. Holder, that you have to own your own business development.
Thank you for that comment. And I think though, as I looked at the comments, if the folks were talking more about business support, but you know, we understand and agree quite well of the need for that paradigm shift and becoming a lot more analytical. But time is against me now. We are out of time. I want to get your comment on one last intervention. We can't take any more at this stage. We are out of time. It's been such an interesting and informative discourse. But that Dion is asking, do franchises fit into the proposed framework, and if so, in what sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we highlight communicating as CEO, we're primarily only using one model of exports, which is just put stuff out on a container at the port and ship out. But there are about 5 different models of export. So there's, as you highlighted, beyond, there's franchising, there is joint ventures. So you can do a joint venture with another business in CARICOM, and therefore you're bringing flowing capital back in. You can set up subsidiaries, so you own all, and you can have micro subsidiaries. You don't have to. So a snow cone man can set up a snow cone subsidiary in England. You know, one snow cone car in Barbados, and then you set up a snow cone car in England. So it means, you know, you set up one in New York. So it doesn't have to be big. You know, when we think about subsidiaries and stuff, we think about Sagicor, we think about, you know, big, but it's business models. You're just leveraging these scientific tools that help you to make money. You know, so absolutely, we're here to help with the science of business. We're tooling ourselves. Every day, we're getting tooled with the necessary equipment, the necessary skills to help with double-digit growth. Notice, I keep repeating, double and triple-digit growth. That's it. Once you come through the doors, Mark, we want double-digit growth. I have full attention for you. But I'm not running around behind nothing beneath 10%.
All right. I wanna close on an interesting comment you use, and that is, it's about business, it's not about emotion. It is
Yeah,
about business.
yeah,
Not emotion at all. It's not emotional response, it's about an analytical approach and scientific approach to business and to development.
yeah.
Colleagues, we want to thank Mr. Mark Hill, the CEO of Export Barbados, who would have shared with us today as we looked at facilitating an export culture among small firms, continuing our conversation as we would have started, as I mentioned. Last year, we had Small Business Week, looking at how can we internationalize our businesses. And he's given us a lot of food for thought. For those of you who may have joined late, please don't fear. You can go onto the website, SBA TV, on our website, and you can watch the session again. Also, you can go on our Facebook page and you will see that the session was also streamed. You can watch it again. If you have a few moments, please go into the chat section now and click on the feedback form there and answer those few questions for us. Give us some feedback. Give us your thoughts. Remember, this kind of evaluation is important for us to improve as we go on. But we're really thankful to Mr. Hill for sharing with us. We really enjoyed his thoughts on the science of business and what we really need to do as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as administrators, even in how we really pivot our MSME sector to become international in their focus and to internationalize their businesses. So we really want to thank him, and we look forward, Mark, to receiving some of that data that you mentioned, being provided to us. If we can get it on a monthly basis, trust me, it will help also in our own analyses that we will do here in the Secretariat. So we thank you. We thank our members and our friends who would have been a part of this session today. Remember, every month we bring one of these educational or networking forum to you as the members to help you to do business and better, to help you to network, to help you to grow and transform your enterprise. Look out in the month of April for our networking event. I can let you know now that with the COVID restrictions being lifted somewhat, this event in April will be a face-to-face one. All right, so as usual, members, we'll send you the information via the email blast sent out every week or on our Facebook and various posts that we'll place there to remind you about this event coming off in the month of April, a face-to-face event. It's been a long time. All of our sessions thus far have been online on our Zoom platform, but we believe that we can venture out now in the month of April for a face-to-face event, a face-to-face activity. So look out for that. Again, please go to the chat now and click on the feedback form and give us your thoughts on our session today. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for this month's webinar. We thank Mr. Mark Hill from Export Barbados and his team for being a part of the conversation today. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next Small Business Association members event. Once again, thank you. God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.